listening to Practice on Purpose, where physicians can explore how to set up their career on purpose from the very beginning to stay connected to their purpose for their entire career. I'm Dr. Nicole Ewell, a health psychologist with decades of experience in healthcare, from the front lines of a level 1 trauma center to the leadership in one of the largest healthcare systems in the country. I'm passionate about physician well-being and creating mentally healthy workplaces. If you want to thoughtfully establish a career that aligns with your values and passions and ensure a long and rewarding life as a physician, then you've come to the right place. Today, we're talking about student loans, and I'm very excited to introduce to you Zach Geist from Student Loan Tutor. He's with us today to talk about all things student loan repayment. Welcome, Zach.
Thanks, Nicole.
So
I hope this is going to be, and I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more interesting than people are anticipating by hearing student loans.
I suspect. I suspect many people are like, tell me everything.
Oh, no. They're like, please try to do it in as short of time as possible. I will make this quite interesting. I think that your listeners will be surprised.
Great. So do you want to tell me a little bit, Zach, about how you got started in this industry?
Yeah, maybe we start with that, because I heard you talking about purpose and vocation as the Western term, or dharma, maybe from an Eastern perspective, or calling, right? Being able to be in alignment with one's calling. And it's very difficult to be able to do that when you're in some form of indentured servitude, because all of a sudden the economic tail begins to wag the dog, and your decisions are made by what is economically feasible or what is statistically feasible. And all of a sudden you find yourself doing something that was not your calling, trying to meet the economic need. So I got into this because I too was trying to find my calling, and part of that calling was that what I was doing is morally good, which was, I guess, a privileged position to be in, to be able to do something morally good and earn a livelihood. A lot of people feel like they have to do things and they compromise their values for a vocation or for work. They don't even call it a vocation. They would call it work, or they would call it a job. And they don't have this privilege that probably your listeners either have. Even the fact to look at this is just such a, and I don't mean privilege as a pejorative term. I mean privilege as like, wow, what a great gift that we have, and something that we could be grateful for, that we're able to even inquire about how we could align our purpose with what we do with our lives. And for me, finding something that was really beneficial to others. And for me, it was either helping with drug rehabilitation or helping with student loans. Those were the two kind of final things that I was looking at. And this seemed a lot less stressful. So I decided to go this route. And I've been doing this for over 10 years now. And that was the reason.
Cool. One thing I'd like to share is my own story. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, and I did a PsyD, which is a very expensive degree because there's not a lot of teachers, assistants, rewards, and things. Yeah. And I had a fellowship for work in diversity, equity, inclusion, which paid half of my tuition, but I still had $70,000 worth of loans. And when I moved to Milwaukee from Miami, I started looking to see if the company that I was going to work for had loan forgiveness, if they qualified. And I couldn't find anything that said that they did. Well, 10, 15 years later, I discovered that they did. And if I had known that, I would have made some different decisions about how I line things up. So I started a family as soon as I moved to Milwaukee. So I decided to work part-time. If I had just worked a few more hours and still stayed part-time, I would have qualified for those loan forgiveness programs and saved myself a lot of money. So although I had low interest rates, I was, grateful that I was able to consolidate at a very ideal time in our history where the rates were very low. So it's not been a huge burden. But I have friends who call their loan repayments, friends who are physicians who call their loan repayments their second mortgage or their extra invisible car. So if I had or known that something like this existed years ago and had sought help, I would have done things very differently.
Yeah, what I'm about to say is going to totally transform those who are listening to it. And I think that what's going to come up for them is feelings of disbelief. And I hope that they do their research, use a scientific approach to what I'm saying, and, trust me until you are able to verify. So trust me enough to verify that what I'm saying is accurate. And I doubt that this would be a second mortgage for anybody listening, provided they know how to manage their loans correctly. And this is an important distinction, is that traditionally speaking, you don't manage a loan correctly. Repaying a loan is very simple. You have whatever your loan amount is, and well, traditionally it's very simple, not with student loans. You have a specific amount that you've borrowed, you have the loan terms or conditions, and then you have the interest rate, and then it's basically the lower the interest rate, the quicker you pay it off, the less you're going to spend on that specific debt. And with student loans, it's like a choose your own adventure story. I don't know do you remember those books growing up? I'm aging myself. Yeah, it's like if you decide to, in this case, if you decide to treat your loan like a traditional loan, turn to page 38, and then you become a statistic, right? So you're trying to pay this thing down, you're choking all of your cash flow, you're not investing in your practice, and you're making compromises many times, right? You're saying, gosh, I've got to service this debt, so I'm going to now take this job, or I'm not going to start my practice yet, or I'm going to not spend time with my kids. I'm going to work extra hours to qualify for PSLF when maybe I don't even need to, because traditional loan forgiveness might pay that off. Or I'm going to refinance and privatize my loans to get a lower interest rate in order to pay this off faster, not understanding that they don't have an accurate student loan repayment forecast. And I just threw that word out there. It's a term I created in the space. And student loan repayment forecast would allow you to understand what your actual effective interest rate is. And this is super important. I hope people are paying close attention to this. And there's some words that I'm going to say that might go over your head. So just be patient with yourself and hopefully patient with me. And I'm trying to use the most simplistic language that I can to describe this.
Well, I'll interrupt and let you know if I don't understand something.
Please do. That'll be a good barometer for how well I'm doing. So traditionally, there's any type of loan is going to have an interest rate, and that is your stated interest rate. And that for virtually every loan, that is your effective interest rate. Unless you default on that loan, it goes to collections and you settle with the collection agency. I don't know, maybe some of your listeners have done that. Maybe some of them have been blessed not to ever have to undergo that. But student loans don't work that way. Again, they can if you decide you want to take the traditional route, but student loans have things built into them, federal student loans specifically, not private student loans. And they have income-driven repayment as one of the repayment options. I call it, there's two repayment pathways. One is balance-based repayment, and that works. If you decide that choose your own adventure story, that's going to work just like any other loan. Yeah, pay unless the administration just forgives 10,000 of it or does whatever. Traditionally, it's going to work however that works. In this case, they didn't do it, as we know. And then income-driven repayment is a different pathway. Now, the minute you're going income-driven repayment, a lot of people make the misassociation that somehow income-driven repayment is for people with low income or for people that are in need. And that is not the case. So if there's anything that someone could listen, is that I have surgeons, I have doctors, I think I even have a plastic surgeon on income-driven repayment, right? Probably a couple of them, dentists, chiropractors, psychologists with successful practices. And they're an income-driven repayment. And oftentimes with very low payment options, sometimes zero. And this is confusing. And traditionally speaking, with any other type of debt other than student loans, you don't want to carry a debt. Because when you carry a debt, what ends up happening is the interest grows, right? Because that's what happens with debt. It has an interest rate, a stated interest rate. And that stated interest rate is how much interest grows. And if you're not paying it, then it's growing. And then the interest is accumulating interest. It's compounding, right? So now you have interest growing interest on itself. And what I'm about to tell you is in fact true. And you're not hearing this, which is interesting. Because there's not really, our marketing is profit. It's based on a profit motive. It's a pay to play thing. So the organizations that are marketing and paying for media about student loans are banks, and they want you, and their business is to have you refinance. So they want you to imagine that they want you to treat your student loan like you treat any other loan. Right. What is the lowest interest rate I could get? And they don't cover the nuance of how is your effective interest rate different from your stated interest rate? And I think maybe I say this now because it's alarming and true, that all of our 95% or more of our clients, we have thousands of active clients that we're currently managing. We've helped over 10,000 borrowers with this exact process, mostly physicians, almost exclusively people with graduate degrees, $100,000 or more. Our average client has over $250,000 of student loan debt. And if a stated interest rate fluctuates between 7 and, if they have parent plus loans, could be over 8%, right? And their effective interest rate, the actual interest rate they're going to pay, is less than 0%.
Because
which that means that they're going to pay less than 0% interest. Now, let me ask you a question. What bank is offering less than 0% interest on refinancing your student loans?
none that I've heard of.
None, right? Yeah. Not even a family member generally will offer you those types of terms. And many of our clients have negative interest rates. I'd say most of our clients have negative interest rates. And what that means is at the end of the student loan forecast, if someone borrowed, say, $100,000, at the end of the loan term, if they paid after they're done paying for that debt and any tax implication associated with it, they're going to pay back less than what they borrowed. Not less than they borrowed plus interest, less than they borrowed, which means they have a negative interest rate. If you end up only paying back, let's say you service $25,000 on a $100,000 loan, right? And then you have the loan get forgiven. Let's say you service $25,000 over the life of the loan, then the loan is forgiven, and then you're taxed on the forgiven amount, and that tax is another $25,000, means that you've paid $50,000 in this very arbitrary example. You've spent $50,000 servicing a $100,000 loan that has a stated interest rate of, let's say, 7%. Right? So if you're not paying anything, that should accrue $7,000 the first year and then compound on that. But it doesn't in this case. In this case, if you've only paid $50,000 and the loan is gone, right? Then you have an effective interest rate, not stated. Your effective interest rate is negative 50%. And a lot of clients have a negative 100% interest rate. And you know what else has a negative 100% interest rate? A scholarship. They're identical. Right. They're identical. Someone that could qualify for a $0 payment, realize full public service or full student loan forgiveness with no tax implication, that person would have the same effective outcome as someone that had a scholarship.
Right. And physicians are uniquely positioned for this, right? Because they have so many opportunities to get their loans paid or forgiven in so many different settings.
Yeah, I mean, I'd make it really simple because there's a lot of different. I think that this is some of the disservice. There's so many loan forgiveness options, just period. There's entire books of like, if you work in this rural place and, you work on this demographic for this many hours, for this many years, and they're part of this, participating in this thing, then you get $35,000 after this amount of time. These things are confusing because that benefits a very small group of people. What benefits everybody is traditional income-driven repayment and student loan forgiveness. And everybody qualifies for student loan forgiveness if they could reflect a payment that would create an effective outcome from that pathway, which there's probably less than a handful of people over the course of 10 years that I have not been able to say income-driven repayment is the best option for you, right? That means that after talking to over 10,000 people, probably 50,000, I don't even have the number of people we've talked to, I have the people that we've actually worked with, is that a handful I've said, for your specific scenario, you make so much money that refinance and pay your loan off in the next 3 years makes sense for you. You should go do that. In which case, my opinion was very valuable for them. But virtually everybody, the income-driven repayment pathway, going after loan forgiveness, will reduce what their effective interest rate will be.
So some of the common mistakes that people make is assuming that they make too much to qualify for that kind of thing. And they think of their loan as a traditional loan rather than...
They think about their loan as a traditional loan. They don't understand how income is calculated as it pertains to student loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment calculation. They don't understand how that's calculated. And they don't understand, and it's not because they're stupid. These are like the most educated people there are. Like the clients that we work with are the most educated people in our country, and the challenge is that traditionally speaking, people that get into finance that have a deep, holistic, encyclopedic knowledge of finance traditionally do not work with people that are in debt. People get into finance because they want to make a lot of money. And I got into finance because I wanted to help people. So that is a distinction. And I think it's important. And I ended up becoming very financially successful. We have, as far as I know, the largest private organization helping student loan borrowers in this country. We have a staff of over 30, and we have people, corporate office in Salt Lake City, and this has grown over the last decade, and it's been super challenging. And I probably would have made much more money working in traditional finance, and this just happened to start based on a purpose that I felt that I had. And
Right.
so the challenge is to get really good information is difficult to find because it's complicated and it's woven in to all the other aspects of your financial life, right? It's woven into your tax filing status. It's woven into how you earn income. Do you work for a for-profit? Do you work for a nonprofit? Do you work for the government? Do you have your own business? How do you get paid through your own business? What kind of structuring do you have? How do you file taxes? Do you file married filing joint? Do you file married filing separate? When are your loans taken out? How much is your balance? What is your stated interest rate? What's going to happen to your income over time? What's happening to your family size during that time? What are the current subsidies that are available? What are the changes to higher education reform, right? Like the best plan a year ago is no longer the best plan today.
Right.
And
Things are
that
changing
would have been the same 4 years prior to that. The way that the loan servicers, so a lot of people make the confusion that their loan servicer is changing. And I hear them say the term, oh, my loan got bought out by Navient or got bought out by Great Lakes or got bought out by Mohila or got bought out by, whomever, and they didn't get bought out. These are loan servicers that are contracted by the federal government to service the loan. They don't actually have the loan. The loan is from the federal government if you have a direct loan. If not, it could be private lenders, but you could always consolidate to a federal student loan, and there's reasons to do that, and there's reasons to not do that. And there's nuance in all of that.
So I didn't know that. So they're more like a property manager. It's more like a property manager than an actual, they don't own the building, they just manage the property.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay. And they are incentivized to get on and off the phone with you as fast as possible. And they're incentivized to hire people for the least amount of income that they could possibly pay to service that. And you have people with let me ask you a question. Would you want to go to a psychologist that has no training in psychology?
I would not.
No. Especially maybe they have mental health conditions on top of it because of kind of the lifestyle they're leading. Sadly, the loan servicers are hiring the lowest common denominator. There are no financial education qualifications that exist for the people who are answering the phone at the loan servicers. And if you call one of your loan servicers, you'll be able to determine that, if you haven't determined it already, that this is the case. In fact, according to an independent study by the National Consumer Law Center, I think it was 4 years ago, this is an independent study, the error rate, and this is not my opinion, this isn't Zach Geist saying this is the Inspector General, right? Says that the error rate of loan servicers, meaning if you fill out everything and do everything correctly, the chances that they will make an error is 61%.
Wow.
So that would be like if you go get a mortgage and you know that the loan officer is going to screw up 61% of the time. Or if you had a tax professional doing your taxes and they're going to screw up and get you a worse result 61% of the time, would you still use that tax professional? Well, the answer is no. You'd either learn how to do all of it yourself, which is one option, or you would find a tax professional that boasts much greater degrees of accuracy, preferably in your favor.
Right. And here's the thing, the main source of information for most people, we're not learning about I certainly didn't learn anything about finances or business or loans in my very expensive doctoral program. And so nobody's learning about this stuff. And the main source of information on this topic is like TikTok and Instagram. You see a 30-second clip on, hey, did you know you never have to pay your loans again? And then you're kind of going off of those fragments of information.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, one of the challenges that I run into, and I think that, people, we're super busy. You can't get an appointment for like 2 weeks to speak with one of our staff, for the actual planning call, right? And that oscillates. But right now, I think it's booked out. I have a constant flow of where that's booked out till. And one of the challenges that we run into, because some people are like, gosh, when they hear what we do, and if you look at our reviews, you could see it. And, this is one of those, what do they say? Shameless promotion elements. And, and it's accurate. So people really love what we're able to do. And they say, gosh, this is unbelievable. This is like a financial miracle. I don't even view my student loans as something negative anymore. It has virtually no effect on my life. It's like someone that has, I don't know, some type of psychological issue that figures out a way to self-regulate. And all of a sudden they're like, wow, I don't have that issue anymore. Or, maybe a better example is, someone who, has cold sores and they figure out how to like not have cold sores. And so like it doesn't have that same impact that they would normally have. And so the difference is that at some point it's cured. You hit the point of the loan forgiveness, and then the loan is gone. And what's cool is you don't need to have that event occur in order to have the liberation from it. You simply have to understand what your forecasted forgiveness amount is going to be, what your interest rate is going to be if nothing changes, and understand how that dynamic works, and understand that you have a team of people doing all of this for you. So you don't ever have to think about it except for 10 minutes a year when you look at what's best for the next year, because this has to happen year over year over year. The recertification has to take place in order to stay in these programs. Yes.
And to be in, this really does, what you're talking about really connects to the whole mission of this podcast, to connect with your purpose. Because if you have financial freedom, you can make a lot different decisions than you would if you needed to take the highest yielding paying job. So I have people that I work with or coach as physicians who suddenly are in sight of paying off their loans, and man, do they start reassessing their career path once they know that the end is in sight, or that they can leave the organization that offers that loan repayment or loan forgiveness because they suddenly have this financial freedom. So knowing that, I want to ask you, if we're walking through the life of a medical professional, let's start with the pre-med college student. What should they be thinking about when they're thinking about what school should I go to? A lot of people say,
they should think about
don't go broke on your undergrad, that kind of stuff.
Solely what they should be thinking about. And it's going to be hard to believe. They should be thinking about whether they want to become a doctor, what type of, and this should be their constant inquiry. What type of doctor, what kind of medicine would they like to practice? What type of lifestyle that they would want to live? And they should not be thinking about how much loans they should get or how much whatever that is. That should not be the question. And the reason for this is that, again, I have a very large sample size. So I don't have, in statistics, there's the law of small numbers. I have a very big statistic. I have 10 years, hundreds of thousands of people moving through who I'm communicating with. I have a very specific demographic, mostly doctors who I work with, or people with doctorates, people with lots of student loan debt. And they're going to pay back less than they borrowed the vast majority of the time. If someone qualifies for public service student loan forgiveness, which many allopathic medical doctors do, right, that work for hospitals, a lot of hospitals are nonprofits, right? And they're going to qualify for 10 years. So if we could keep their payment, if Student Loan Tutor, or they figure out how to do this themselves, which is possible, they're smart people. It is changing. It's more stress. Most people find, especially people whose time is very valuable to them, they don't want to risk that. They want to make sure that someone's licensed and insured and, compliant that's going to do this. And it explains it and has a track record. And that's why we do really well with that demographic. So I would say get as much student debt as you need so you don't have to work any part-time jobs. So you could maybe intern or, volunteer to work in the types of professions that you think you might want to work in, rather than like working some job that you could earn some money to try to like pay down some debt. And you're like, trying to study for the MCAT, but you can't because you're tired and sleepless, and you put off having a family because you're trying to work a job and pay for school. And, it's just not practical. And I could explain that to somebody very specifically, but until it's very personalized, it's hard to believe, because traditionally speaking, in the past, people went to school and they worked while they went and they paid for it because school was much cheaper and the cost of living was much cheaper. And you didn't have BlackRock buying up 25% of all single family homes. So you can't even buy, you're in bidding wars to just buy a home. Groceries didn't cost, $250 for a cart full of groceries, right? So a lot of these things, and it wasn't expected that you had to have gig work and podcasts in order to just like run a business to practice your profession to earn a livelihood, right? These things were not present. People would buy a house and they would pay it off. They didn't like constantly move every 7 years, which caused people to reset the, what they have to pay on their mortgage. And then, whatever you did make, end up paying, in the end of life care. And, you need a full strategy for that piece. And hopefully you have good financial advisors, on your team that really care, that are also, that's really their calling and they really want to help. And And I think step one for these medical doctors is truly understanding, or any physician is truly understanding what impact that student loan is going to have on their life. It's not as big of an impact as most of their peers are going to say, because traditionally speaking in medicine, at least traditional medicine, talking about MDs and DOs, they're getting a lot of their financial advice from other older physicians. And what was true for them, and these people mean well, what's true for them is different than the landscape now. And it's really hard to understand that. It's really hard to believe that. And another thing is that doctors often make, there's a heuristic that would make people believe that just because someone is highly educated in medicine, that would also make them also equally intelligent in finance. And these are one of these biases that becomes very dangerous, because somebody could have a degree of confidence where they're making decisions that they believe are correct based on very limited information. And they're confident in so many elements that they end up making very confident decisions that are very correct based on the research they've done, but are just completely wrong. And I see this happen all the time in the realm of student loans.
It's really upside down from everything that I've been taught, or that I think most people who go into med school are taught. You're kind of told, well, you should really avoid student loans as much as possible. Or some physicians nowadays, their parents are both physicians or both attorneys, or they have means to pay for the medical education, and they may be thinking they're doing their family long-term or the generations to come a favor by paying for school, when in fact it might make more sense for the parents to keep their money and put it towards their own retirement. And
if that's an option, it almost always makes sense. There are some situations where the parents would have to take out Parent Plus loans, and that might not make sense if the parents are making tons of money. Most of the, it's the traditional medical challenge, right? Is that, you have the doctor, down the stream, whether that's a psychotherapist or an MD or a chiropractor, an acupuncture, or naturopath, whoever it is, you have them downstream, and you have someone or something, the system, whatever it is, society, chucking them into the river, and then you're out there rescuing them. And student loan tutors a lot this way. People are like, well, what do we do for people before they get in this problem? I'm like, well, the challenge is most people aren't even questioning this until they're already sick. In this case, sick means saddled with tons of debt, stressed out. They try to service it for a while until they hit this point, this impasse where something shifts in their life. And they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this thing? And then somehow they talk to someone, they hear about us, or they start researching it to see what they could do differently. But this is generally when I find people. I've serviced this debt. I've spent $100,000. I've hardly even touched the principal. And then I look back and we walk through it, a 90-minute planning call, which goes through and looks at exactly their situation. It's not canned. We're like, pull up on our screen their exact loans using their MyAid data, look at all of their financials, how they file taxes, what their spouse's income is, and their family size, and how it's going to shift. We go and show them all the subsidies, explain how effective and state of interest rate works. And if this changes, this is what's going to happen to it. And this is how higher education is formed. This is what's in the works. Right. And so this is when your tax obligation is going to be due. There's going to be a tax event at this point. And this is, what that means, like all of your income is going to be taxed at that same amount at this specific time. Like, so you have to prepare for that. Like, we're going to talk, you have a financial advisor. We've got to include them. Now they know you have more cash flow than they thought you had. And you got to plan for this tax event. And, so this is all part of that process. But yeah, what percentage of people get to have that experience when it comes to repaying their student loans? Virtually no one. Like, it's a fraction of 1%.
So you're getting a chance. We're getting a chance now to talk to people ahead of time and maybe influence some young professionals to say, listen, maybe I'll not worry about that so much, or, I'll
don't even worry about it. Take out as much debt. The only way you're paying that debt back is if you make so much money. It's like more than a plastic surgeon, to where you literally have to pay it back. The only way you're paying that back is that you are so massively successful that it becomes a non-issue. It's like, I hear this a lot with people when they start a business, and like they talk to some advisor, and the advisor goes, well, what if the business gets super big and you have 20 times the revenue? Like, how are you going to deal with that? You go, I don't know. When that happens, I'll have extra money and I'll hire people. I'll hire a consultant. I don't know how I'll deal with it. I'm not going to worry about making 20 times more than what I should make. That's the key element. The only way you're worried about paying back that loan is if you're making so much money that some professional team like mine can't reduce your payment to close to zero.
And good for you.
Yeah. That worst case scenario,
We're all jealous.
Your payment's close to zero and you're working with us and you have a huge negative interest rate of probably 70%. Best case scenario, you're so successful that a team of professionals that do this all day, every day, 4 physicians can't help you, and you have to pay it off because you're making so much money that there's nothing we do.
You're too wildly successful.
Either way. But what most people do is they're, I don't know whether to go to this school or that. Go to the best school. Because what's really valuable not only is what you learn, it's who you're going to meet at that school.
The connection,
like the connections. And for college, it used to be a class related thing. And then, the New Deal made it to where everybody could go to school. It used to be rich people paid for these colleges, right? And they would go and they'd meet the other people. And it was this, this thing that some people did. Most people practice trades. And we're looking as trades are earning more and more money because less and less people are getting into the trade. So if you're going to go to school, part of the major value of that is like actually learning the stuff, not just like passing the test so you could go out and make money, which is traditionally people are desperate. They need to make money. So like, how do I just memorize this stuff, wrote and pass the test so I could, the goal, right? The purpose is I just want to make money. There's a term in Greek called telos, right? It's moving towards a whole position. And it's often used in like Jungian psychology. And people forget like what it exactly, and it's not that they forget really, is that they don't even have the luxury to think about it. Like, what do I want my life to look like? Like, I live in Hawaii on an 86-acre, like Edenic paradise with cascading waterfalls in my backyard. I could work.
We do not hate you for it.
Yeah, and I've got everybody that works for me are people that I know deeply and intimately, right? And they come and they take trips here, and we have a community of people in Utah where my corporate offices are located, and we have a food forest there where we do community supported agriculture where we grow food locally in Salt Lake City and we send it home to families. And these were all ideas and like part of my purpose, right? And so now they're all weaving together. But how many of these things would I be able to even consider if I was like, if my debt burden was exceeding what my income was, or was like, I'm trying to figure out how to like cut out coffee or just some crazy thing like that. I mean, that doesn't take any work. You see the Dave Ramseys and Susie Ormans and the traditional financial pundits, and it's just so simple. I could give you all of their knowledge in like a minute. Well, maybe not all, but like 80%, 90% of what they say is like, pay off your debt and pay it, consolidate, pay off your highest first and your lowest last, and, it's pull up your bootstraps and pay it off. And on a more simple level, student loans don't work the way you think they do. That's not just my opinion. I have thousands of clients that could tell you the same, and you could find it. Effective interest rate is not the same. It's almost always, and by almost always, 95+% of the time, it's going to be less than your stated interest rate. Almost always, it's going to be a 0% interest rate or a negative interest rate. And in some cases, it's going to be negative 100%, which is the same as a scholarship. And if you could get a scholarship, should you get one? That would be my question for you, Nicole.
Well, I suppose that depends. I feel like there's always nuances, right? What are the contingencies?
Maybe you have to go to a specific school and maybe it wouldn't make sense. But if you could get a no strings attached scholarship to whatever school you want for whatever profession you want, and just somewhat, some foundation was just willing to just give you the money because you wrote a great essay once, would you take the money? Well, the answer is probably yes, if you wanted to go to any school you want. So now people at least know student loan forgiveness is real. I think people understand that income-driven repayment exists. People do not understand, by and large, that there's a difference between stated interest rate and effective interest rate. And people don't understand, they don't, until you fully do it, you don't realize how freeing it is for your soul. And I believe in a soul, or maybe not even belief is not the right word. When I investigate whether we have some type of calling in life, there is evidence for me that I've seen in myself and others that appears to be that there's a calling in life. And if we look back at our lives, we could start to see little intimations of what our calling is. And there's these pathways where sometimes we might sell our soul, so to speak, where we do something for the money instead of like for what it is that's really moving our heart.
So on that point, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is if you are in a position where you can, like if you're in a position to choose between a place that offers loan repayment and another one that offers loan forgiveness because of maybe the setting, which is better financially? I don't even know if you can answer that question, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, they're different. So if often, well, see, I hate to give general advice. If you're listening to this, you at least know that there's at least one organization that you should research to see whether or not what I'm saying is true. Because if it is, and this is a resource you have, which I know it's true, but you don't necessarily, I would say I would speak with us or someone like us, and I would probably speak with someone with a law degree that works in student loans that has done this for a long time. If it's not us, I recommend us, but I'm of course biased, which
Yes.
you should know that I'm going to be. And if your payment is $72 a month and they offer to pay your student loans, that's a $72 a month benefit. I would go with anything that shortens my loan forgiveness window, which traditionally is going to be for-profit companies that offer some type of, repayment piece. And they might also have that stipulation where you have to be in a certain repayment plan or they only cover so much amount. But that would be a moot point if you're working with someone like a team like us, with some exceptions. There are certain people that are really challenged, but it's a very small percentage that are challenging to drive their payments down. And that's pretty nuanced. And I don't want to go too deep in the weeds there because that could take the whole rest of the call. Mm-hmm. So I would go after, if there's an option working for a for-profit company and a company that's a nonprofit or the government, and you love the work the same, and the only difference is one's a for-profit, one's a nonprofit, the benefit for the nonprofit is going to be that you're going to qualify for student loan forgiveness with 10 years of repayment, as opposed to 20 to 25 years over here.
Right.
So chances are the nonprofit will be lower, but not necessarily. I have plenty of people who have their own business or they don't work for a nonprofit, and their forecasted forgiveness is also extremely high, almost the same, and in some cases the same as the PSLF, the person that works for the nonprofit. There may be a tax implication with the for-profit piece, but currently, if your loans were forgiven in the past during Biden's first term, there was no tax implication. So that may or may not be there at the end of your loan term. You have to plan, again, like a choose your own adventure story. It may or not be there. If it's there, it's this. Right. If it's there, it's that. And then tax rates might be different 20 years from now, maybe higher, maybe lower, You might have other income there that you're not counting for. So these are important numbers to know. I think the biggest issue is people don't even know, they don't even have enough information to make the appropriate decision. And they don't know. You don't know that now that they're listening, hopefully you could hear that you don't know that you didn't know. And then now you've moved into this psychological stage. It starts with, you don't know that you don't know. Then you know that you don't know. And then you know that you know, right? And then the last thing is it's so embedded that it just flows from you. And that's maybe where I'm at with student loans. I don't even have to think or look at notes because I live in this space. I know that I know that I know. And I don't even have to think about it.
So what is the life cycle of working with you? Can you walk through that very briefly? Just what would happen if someone calls you?
Yeah, traditionally how it goes is they would go to our website, and there's a brief thing that they fill out that I have federal student loan, because we don't want to waste our time or their time. We have a waiting list of about 2 weeks to talk to what's called a tutor. The tutor is the planner, the person that's actually doing the plan. Mm-hmm. And this is all proprietary. There's no school that people go to learn this. We have to teach them internally. So when we're staffing, this is a huge process, And virtually we've never had a tutor leave the company. It's the same. Well, that's not true. There was some tutors very early in the beginning. In the last 7 years, not a single tutor has left the company. So our retention rate's very high. So whoever you're with is probably going to be who you're with the life of the loan. We pay really well because we have to, because that's super important for us. So you would call. First, you would fill out your information, and it would say, do you have federal student loan debt? Mm-hmm. What is your balance, right? If you have less than 75 grand, we're going to insist that you do your own research, try to do it yourself. If you really, really want to talk to us and you're like, hey, I know what your fees are. I want to work with you. I don't care. There's so many people that need our help that fit the perfect demographic where it saves them 100,000 or more just working with us. So it saves them 100 grand, relieves all their pressure. We take over all doing all the work. And that's who we want most of the time. So they'd fill that out. They'd talk to someone on the phone that's called, they're doing an evaluation, just making sure what they're saying is accurate, gathering all the information for the tutor, making sure that they have what they need set up so that the client and the tutor can actually access all of this information and has access to the client's, full financial picture, at least enough to where the tutor glean that from them. So then they talk with the tutor for 90 minutes. And this is an educational call, right? So they'll figure out what's the difference between a stated and effective interest rate, how the subsidies work, what the student loan forgiveness forecast is going to be, right? And then how this dynamic works over time, when the tax event's going to take place, and what changes they need to make, how income flows to them, which there's going to be some work on their part to do. But then they'll understand fully how that process is happening. And they'll be, at that moment in time, they'll have a choice. They could try to go do this themselves, right? Or they could hire us to do this all for them. And I'd say 90% of people, when it makes financial sense. Occasionally we talk to someone and it's just like, hey, based on what you're doing right now, we can't really do anything to improve your situation. When this situation shifts, here's our information, call us and we'll see if we could do better. But you're already at a $0 payment, your payment's not going to go up anytime soon. You look good and you paid $150 to get a pat on your back and things are good. And it's like going into the dentist. It's like, you've got no cavities. There's your checkup. Here's $150. You're stoked. You're like, oh crap, I wish I had some cavities and I could pay you another $300. So we definitely don't make money off charging $150 to talk to two people for the course of 2 hours, right? So the vast majority of people, we're able to help.
So it sounds like it sounds like the two groups that would probably not benefit from your services are people who have such a little loan amount that it won't make sense to your fees to support them.
It still does. It still makes sense. I've had clients where it's $20,000 and it makes sense. It just doesn't make as much sense. So if you have a choice of who you could help, you just want it to be it shouldn't be a value decision. We're not comparing Hondas and Toyotas here or Teslas and whatever other Rivians, right? This one has this feature. It's like, here's your education. You already got it. Do you want to pay $200? If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to pay $400,000 over the life of your loan. If you do what we're doing, you're going to pay $66,000 over the life of the loan, and you don't have to deal with anything, and we take it over from here. Provided we've done our job and it makes sense how we're getting there, and you've done your research and you think we're actually doing the right thing, which we are, you'll find that. I encourage you, please do all the research you want. Ask whatever questions you want. And I'm having something come up in my mind because I said it's $150. I can't even say that, right? My attorney, and I could hear her in my head. We have a full-time compliance attorney. Some states don't allow us to charge that. So we just simply can't. And some states only allow us to charge that if you decide to actually work with us, which kind of becomes a moot point. But there's specific, state-specific things. So hopefully that avoided us having to edit that piece out of the podcast.
So
whenever I'm giving general advice, it doesn't apply to everybody. So I have to do the whole caveat of well, it varies, it depends. And people hate that. They're like, please give me something. So I'm doing my best to give something. There's a big thing happening right now called the one-time IDR account adjustment. I haven't even mentioned it because it's slated to end on April 30th. And this has been remarkable. I have clients that have literally never, because they met me right after grad school, they've literally never paid a penny on their graduate loans. They have one of the clients has over $400,000 in student loans. Now she has zero. She never made a payment. Her loans are forgiven completely. She never made a payment. I want to give you that point. And there was no tax implication. So here's one of those examples where speaking to us led to the same exact thing as if she had a scholarship, a full ride. Right. Because she never made a payment. Her loans were completely forgiven. And she never had to pay any tax. There was no tax event because it was during Biden's first term. Now, how did this happen? It happened because of this crazy idea that the Biden administration had. So benefited a lot of people, not everybody. And she had some old debt that was back from 1996 or something. And when we were able to consolidate them together, it aged the loan back all the way back then. She hit the 25 years. Even though those new loans were not 25 years old, it dated it back to that. Her loans got discharged because under the Biden administration, there was no tax implication. And because she's working with us, they kept their payment at zero for the last 8 years since she's graduated from naturopathic school. So her loans are gone. I saved her more than $400,000 because She would have had to pay interest on top of that. It would have been compounding. I stopped her interest capitalization completely, so she didn't gain. None of her interest ever accrued more interest. She still accrued interest up until recently at half the amount per month, never capitalizing, which means it never became part of the principal. And I hope I don't lose people on this, but some people that have understandings in finance are going to hear what I'm saying, and they're going to be like, well, wait, how in the heck? How have I never heard that? That's a real common thing. I talk to financial advisors all the time. They're like, I never heard any of this. Like what you're saying, like, how have I never heard this? And I'm like, well, again, it's profit and it's incentivized based on profit. That's how our information travels. All this information's there, but it doesn't benefit people who work in finance to like propagate this information. And just
so it sounds like it's really helpful to seek help from someone to help understand all the nuances. And so I really appreciate you helping people coming on today to help people think outside the box and sharing your own experiences of creating a life that you're passionate about. I just have a couple closing questions that I ask everybody. Sure. What is your greatest passion or purpose?
My greatest passion and purpose is reconnecting. Well, first of all, starting with me is feeling connected to the sacred. And helping people to connect with the sacred, whether that is a soul, a calling, connecting with others to become more healed and more whole, feeling more at home in themselves and more at home in their community and families, and just more at home in the cosmos. Yeah, I would say that's
and that was going to be my next question is how does your current work align you with that? And it sounds like you feel like you're giving people this hope and a choice and freedom to choose a path free of that financial burden, which is really great.
I'll touch on that, which is important. We come into this world, I believe, and we're born in debt. We've been given life through this mysterious way, and here we are alive in the world. And so we feel this debt. And for a student loan tutor to liberate people from what I imagine to be kind of an appropriated debt, we're forced to go into debt. And that's not just student loan debt. It's just we're born into this world and we're not free like a squirrel where we could just be in trees and eat acorns or whatever. Like we don't have land traditionally when we're born into the world. We don't have community. We don't have the education just available to us. We have to go into debt for that. So any degree that I could help to liberate those who are ready from any portion of that feels deeply in alignment with allowing people to reconnect to that truth. I think people would hear the truth in that. And there's a lot of benefits that come from being able to use debt and money and, division of labor and, there's benefits to it, but it's a like all technologies, it's a slippery slope of how to navigate it. And I think that takes wisdom. And I think wisdom comes from experience. And I think our culture really lacks the wisdom to like what to restrict and where to put our attention. We only have so much life. We only have so much attention. We only have so much money. And it's important that we direct those elements correctly. I think that's our responsibility.
Great. So thank you so much, Zach, for joining us today. And I hope that this has given people a new perspective on their student loans and the way they shape their career, what choices they make with regard to their education, which jobs they choose. There will be some information in the show notes about your company and about some ways that people can engage with you all. So we really appreciate you giving people that fresh perspective. We hope this show has you thinking about your own career and what action you can take to make it ideal for you right from the start. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and tell others to join us. We greatly appreciate your reviews and comments, which help us to grow to a wider audience. And if you want to stay in touch, email me at practiceonpurpose@heyinfluent.com and let me know what topics you want us to explore in future episodes. And remember, build your practice on purpose to stay connected to your purpose. I appreciate you joining us on this journey. Let's keep exploring together. Until next episode. Thank you.
A Huda Media Production.